Good evening, Nittany Lions Nation. Happy to be with you once again. Our Wednesday night special here, 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Tyler Donohue, happy to be with you all once more. Spoke with several of you, I'm sure, last evening. The college football playoff rankings announcement will be with you on Tuesdays when those rankings are revealed. But, of course, you know where to find us on Wednesday nights right here in Happy Valley. Happy, again, to speak with you folks. Week number 11 of the 2017 football season for Penn State, if you can believe it. Game week number 11 is here. Just spent some time on the practice field, indoor practice tonight. Got a chance to speak with a couple of senior players, Deshaun Hamilton, Marcus Allen. Of course, we spoke with Coach Franklin tonight, and he was he elaborated on a lot of stuff. Looking back at the origins of this senior class a little bit, looking ahead at what he's anticipating from the younger players on this team, and obviously a little bit about expectations moving forward for this team. So a lot to get into, as always, on our Wednesday night show. And it's going to be an emotional game on Saturday. A lot of seniors who have meant so much to Penn State over the past few years, many of whom initially committing to Bill O'Brien, others late acquisitions by James Franklin, as he had about 4 weeks on the job to go out and put together a strong recruiting class back in 2014. All these guys, and of course then Saquon Barkley, not a senior. He won't be honored as a senior, but all the expectations are that this will be Saquon Barkley's final time in Beaver Stadium wearing a Nittany Lions uniform. So we're going to talk about that, talk about some conversations I had with Marcus Allen and Deshaun Hamilton. I want to let you guys in on some of the conversations we had, because these guys are emotional right now. You can see it in their eyes. You can see that the emotions aren't just about this season; it's about their career, and it's not just their career at Penn State. I mean, this is a point in these guys' lives right now. 22 years old or so, and they've been on campus for 4, in some cases 5 years. And this was a dream to play college football for so long. They were able to do that, many of them at a high level, win big games, bring a Big Ten championship back to Penn State. But the way college football works is your eligibility is a ticking clock, and when the clock strikes 0, it's time to move on. So many of these players, did great work, I'm sure. In the classroom, many of them are not just leaving with one degree. Many are leaving with multiple degrees or well into or have achieved an opportunity to get a graduate degree. So there is a large body of work to review for these guys. But I don't want to say they're gone quite yet, because they have a home game against Nebraska. They've got a road game at Maryland. And then, of course, whatever lies beyond that. We'll also talk about the ramifications of the college football playoff rankings, which were revealed on Tuesday night. For those of you who didn't join us or get a chance to review what I wrote as a follow-up, pretty big jump for Penn State comparatively when you looked at beating a program like Rutgers, which obviously doesn't carry much clout, but Penn State going up 4 spots in the rankings back into the top 10. So we'll discuss some of the long-term ramifications of what a New Year's Six bowl could potentially mean, another top 10 finish. I think there's some fans out there who have chalked this up as a playoff or bust program right now, and I'm going to tell you why that's not the case for Penn State, at least not yet, and why you should sit back, forget about those losses the best you can moving forward, and enjoy these next 3 games, because Penn State losing several marquee members of this team. You're going to see young players rise up. A lot of change, a lot of transition, but ultimately a foundation now in place. And as I get into my conversations with Deshaun Hamilton and with Marcus Allen that we had this week, and even with Coach Franklin, I'm going to explain to you why this program is light years ahead of when these guys arrived as freshmen. So if you're still distraught, if you're still finding yourself peeking in the rearview mirror day after day when you think about this Penn State team, and the rearview mirror showing you what happened in East Lansing and what happened in Columbus, well, let's put eyes forward and have our focus on the future as I tell you a little bit why this program is in a different place than when these seniors arrive. And wins and losses are only part of that equation. I want to say thank you very much to Bob Shearer out there for looking forward to the commentary. Hey, I look forward to getting to speak with all you folks every week, and I love your commentary as well. So certainly use that comment box. It's there for a reason. Love the engagement. Love to chat with you. If there's a topic you want to discuss, definitely would love you to throw some recruiting questions my way because, recruiting, unlike the season, it is ongoing. It is 365 days a year. There is no stop. We know that when this team finishes this bowl game, regardless of the outcome, we're not going to see them in action, at least in Beaver Stadium, until the spring game. And you're not going to see them in action against an opponent until next fall, which is – but when recruiting stops, that means the program has a problem. Every day is a recruiting effort. So keep the recruiting questions coming. You know that we have our recruiting mailbag Thursday afternoons. Those drop. Love to get a head start on them with our conversation on Wednesday night. Also, to answer a few early comments here, I saw Rico, will Saquon stay for his senior year? Also, Keith Perry, hoping Saquon returns for his senior year. I think there's a lot of fans who are hoping Saquon Barkley stays for his senior year, but I think the realistic outcome here is, especially at the position of running back, which is a shorter shelf life than any other position in football. You look at the NFL, these running backs, even the very best in the game, they're lucky if they can get a big contract after their rookie deal. Because, hey, I'm 29. I don't consider myself super old. My wife may say different sometimes. But 29 years old in the NFL, you'll hear analysts say he's getting up there, the tread on the tire. So Saquon Barkley, to get that year head start in his NFL, it's tough to turn down. That's all I'm saying. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't love Penn State. It doesn't mean that he isn't proud to be an Nittany Lion. It's just an opportunity to fulfill your destiny and fulfill your career as a professional. I think a lot of people out there, if you were a business major or you were a software engineer and trying to study that, if Apple came to you before your senior year of college and said, hey, look, we love your body of work already as an undergrad. You killed it as an intern. We want to bring you on. We want to give you 6 figures. We want you to come out here and work for Apple. Would you blame the kid for skipping his final year of college? It's very similar in the fact that these guys have an opportunity to chase down the dreams they've been working toward. And in a lot of cases, many of these players are graduating in 3 years. I can't say that I know in particular what Saquon Barkley's status is academically, but some people say, well, stay and finish your degree. A lot of these guys are finished with their degrees at the end of 3 years. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about Saquon Barkley as the season progresses in the next few weeks. That's obviously going to be a topic of discussion. He won't be the only one. There are several draft-eligible players who, maybe there's a surprise or two in the mix. Trace McSorley was asked about it after the game last week. He's a redshirt junior. He can come back next year, continue to build on the records he's established at Penn State, or he could roll the dice, take a shot in the NFL. Not a prototypical quarterback at that level, 6 foot, guy that would be considered definitely small in stature to play there. Wouldn't think he would be projected as a high-round pick, but it's still something to consider. And we'll have those conversations, though. That's going to be, obviously, once you're through with the bowls and into the bowls, that's definitely the next phase. Where does the roster go from here? How much turnover is there going to be? Who's going to step up? Who's out of the mix? And, this is a team that will lose a significant chunk of experienced players. But as we've talked about, the recruiting success is at an all-time high for Penn State, and they've only played 3 freshmen this year, folks. So you have 19 members of a 22-player 2017 recruiting class who have red shirts. They're essentially newcomers next year as far as guys who are going to make an impact. They've got a year of experience under their belts, knowing what the expectations are from coaches, knowing what's expected of them also in the classroom, and certainly what it takes from watching the older guys to succeed at the big class. Many of those players in the 2018 group will be on campus in January. The rest will be here in June. And I'm telling you, tough to find many better recruiting classes in the country right now than what Penn State's put together in the 2018. And it's the best when you look at rankings based on the modern recruiting system, which dates back to 2000 when the industry exploded and we had all these rankings. This is the finest Penn State group, the most blue-chip prospects. So, yes, you will lose some familiar faces, but you'll get to know other players who have shown flashes of stardom with Penn State or at the high school level. So we got a lot to talk about. I want to start with basically some reaction to where we are now in the Penn State season and the college football playoff. A win over Rutgers last week. Spoke to many of you, hopefully live from Beaver Stadium after the game. 6-0 Rutgers lead into the second quarter. Everyone's wondering what the heck happened to these Penn State Nittany Lions that were rolling through everybody on their way to 7-0. Then the sleepiness wears off. Early start to the game, cold weather. This team, I think, was still peeking in that rearview mirror, as I said, still looking behind them at those 2 losses, not looking in front of them at what their task was at hand. They did that. They got the wheels in motion. They scored the final 35 points of the game, 35-6 victory. A lot of good out of it. The defense certainly returned to form, albeit Rutgers very reluctant to pass the ball if anyone was at the game or watched the game. Certainly Rutgers had no intention of really forcing it downfield. So, wasn't the biggest test for the defense, but it was a nice bounce-back game for the defense. And I thought, the only thing that you can take away from this on offense is Trace McSorley, super, super consistent, guy that totally, has control of this offense. Now the all-time leader in touchdowns accounted for in Penn State history with 61. He has 30 total touchdowns through 10 games. And a lot of this goes to, and certainly not all of it, because Trace McSorley is a heck of a player in his own right, but much of that credit goes to the fact that defenses are so focused in on Saquon Barkley, who still continues to struggle to gain any momentum on the ground now. In the past 10 quarters, talking about dating back to the second half of the Ohio State game, then the Michigan game, and the Rutgers game, Saquon Barkley with 95 yards on 42 carries, 2 touchdowns on Saturday, but his Heisman Trophy chase has been greatly impacted, and certainly now no longer the front runner. I think he's in good shape to get invited to Manhattan for the ceremony, which is quite an honor in its own. Coach Franklin will be there with him. It will be great exposure for the program to be in that situation, for the Heisman build-up, and on the night itself, it'll be great exposure for the Nittany Lions, for James Franklin, and for Saquon Barkley. And it'll be a nice opportunity to showcase the guy that Saquon Barkley is off the field, because so often that's what they focus in on these Heisman lead-ups. But it's clear to me now, based on these past 2 games, Saquon Barkley's Heisman chances have really taken a direct shot. And there's been a lot of sign, the fingers pointed towards the offensive line. I've seen every day now on Twitter, on Facebook, the offensive line cost him a Heisman Trophy. The offensive line is killing his shot. The offensive line is killing Penn State. And I don't know if it's to that extreme, but there certainly are issues up front, not just with the offensive line, but with the tight end position as well. And Franklin, again, second straight week, he's come out and said, we need to be more physical. I want to find some nastiness from this group. And I'm telling you, get ready for that to be the mantra, not just this week, next week, and bowl week. This will be the mantra for Penn State football, for James Franklin, heading into 2018. Let's get nasty in the trenches. Let's assert ourselves early and often. Let's bully opponents. Hey, we got the finesse components all over the place. We got guys that are going to be able to run past defensive backs. We got running backs who are going to be able to juke you out of your shoes. We got a wizard at quarterback. Let's take care of business in the trenches and make sure teams leave the field feeling pretty bruised up. That's going to be the importance moving forward, I believe. So I think ultimately you look at where they are now, 8-2 on the season. Those 2 losses by a combined 4 points. I think clearly the playoff committee recognizes where this Penn State program is, bouncing them back up to number 10, still looking ahead at number 9. In case anyone missed it, I'll give you the quick rundown of the top 10. Number 1 is Alabama. They have been there every single year during this college football playoff. They're looking to make their fourth run toward the championship in the playoff. Clemson, the reigning national champion, now at number 2. Ugly loss at Syracuse. Surprised they're that high. Miami is the U back. Sure looks like it against Notre Dame. They're number 3 overall, unbeaten in the ACC, maybe on a collision course with Clemson in the conference. Number 4 is Oklahoma. They've got 1 loss against them. They've been lighting it up. Baker Mayfield now the leader in the Heisman Trophy chase. Number 5, Wisconsin. And this certainly sets a precedent that if Wisconsin runs the table here, they got to beat Michigan this week. They've got 1 more game, and then they go to the Big Ten championship against to be determined. Ohio State is the team right now within the driver's seat to be in the Big Ten East representative in that game. But Wisconsin now, number 5, they run the table. They're going to be in the college football playoff. So that's kind of the Big Ten's main hope right now as far as teams getting in. Number 6, Auburn. This is pretty high for a 2-loss team. We saw Penn State end up at number 5 last year with their 2 losses. Now Auburn, after beating the number 1 ranked team in the country in Georgia very handedly, they are number 6 in the country in these rankings, 8-2 on the year. Georgia, who they just beat, right behind them at number 7, Notre Dame, who just got destroyed at Miami, they're number 8. I think that might be too high for them. They got embarrassed. They looked like they were out of their league down there in Coral Gables. And then number 9, Ohio State, 1 point ahead of Penn State on the scoreboard on October 28th. 1 spot again. They've been 1 spot ahead of Penn State for 3 straight weeks now in the college football playoff, although both teams have fluctuated a bit, going up and down. So that's where things stand now. Penn State ahead of USC, TCU, Oklahoma State, Washington State, those other 2-loss teams behind Penn State. So I think that shows you the playoff committee really does have a lot of respect for Penn State. And I think you look at this body of work, and I've heard people saying, why are we talking about Penn State? I've seen comments on I'm sure there are some here. I didn't get a chance to look at them all. But I have people, writing on our articles or writing on these videos and saying, who cares? The season's over. They wasted it. This season's done. This team doesn't care. Forget about this team. A bunch of pretenders. And I'm thinking, when did Penn State become a playoff or bust program? I may be an out-of-towner my first year on the beat, but I don't remember Penn State knocking on the door of the playoffs the first 2 years of the situation. I don't remember Penn State every single year challenging to be a BCS champion. This is a team that didn't finish a season ranked until since 2009 until last year. So perspective is needed, it would seem, for some members of this fan base. I know perspective is hard to find in football. Look, we're all irrational sometimes with the things that we're passionate about. I know many are passionate about Penn State, and it's tough to kind of recalibrate and look inside and see where you're at. But with Penn State, first few seasons with James Franklin, he's on the hot seat. I mean, Sandy Barber needs to literally go out and say, we are behind James Franklin. To get a vote of confidence after losing to Michigan by 39 points last September. They also lost at Pittsburgh last September. This team, through the first 30 games of James Franklin's tenure, was 16-14. Before that, they had Bill O'Brien for a couple years. He steadied the ship a little bit. Limited scholarships available. There was a bowl ban. And before that, I don't need to remind anyone what happened at the end of the Joe Paterno era. This is a program that, since that point where James Franklin was 16-14 and got walloped by Michigan by 39 points, 39 points, I should say, on the road, they are 17-3. Those 3 losses that Penn State has suffered were by a combined 7 points, and all of them came against ranked opponents. 2 of them came against top 10 programs, USC and Ohio State, the other against Michigan State. 3 losses over a 20-game span, all against ranked opponents by 7 total points. So, look, we just saw Ohio State lose by, 35 points or so against Iowa. Teams have bad days. Teams get blown out. This Penn State team has not been blown out. We saw them go down by a significant margin in the Big Ten championship game last year and bounce back. I think it speaks volumes that this team appears ready to play every week. I mean, they're going out there, and Ohio State's not an easy place to play. Michigan State's not an easy place to play. And this is a team, I think, that, just continue to keep your eyes forward. If you look at this program, where they could be, you're talking about 10-2 going into a big-time bowl, a New Year's Six bowl potentially. Last year, 11-3. This will be the first time Penn State has finished back-to-back years with double-digit victory totals since 2008 and 2009. That's a long time ago, folks. Recruits that we're talking about right now were in 3rd grade back then. So the world has changed. College football has changed. We have a playoff system now. Penn State's been through 2 coaches since then. Penn State's been through an enormous scandal since then. And here we are seeing this duplicated success and a lot of opportunity for an extended trajectory pointing upward. So that's kind of my, hey, folks, back away from the panic button conversation with you. Little therapy session for both of us as we discuss where Penn State is right now. So I think a 10-2 season with 2 losses on the road by 4 total points. Look, Alabama might consider that a bad season, but Alabama's been in the college football playoff every year. Nick Saban has won more championships than anyone who's in college football right now. He's won them at 2 different schools. Give James Franklin a little bit of time, and that's where I want to go to next. Because think about where this program was in 2014. I think it's appropriate to discuss this. I think it's appropriate to discuss this because we're talking about these seniors. Talked to Marcus Allen today. he went back, and I think I'm gonna really do a comprehensive written story, I think, about this 2014 class and what they encountered and what they experienced. Some guys committed to O'Brien, some guys got plucked by Franklin as he's doing this mad dash and sending an assistant to California and another to Maryland with 4 weeks to work with, coming from the SEC, getting some Vanderbilt guys. But Marcus Allen said, I was at a party, my home state of Maryland, New Year's Eve. All of a sudden, someone says, yo, Marcus, look at the TV. ESPN's on, and they're saying Bill O'Brien is leaving Penn State. Now, Marcus Allen had spent months committed to Bill O'Brien. That was his plan, going to go to Penn State, going to be part of this new Penn State era, and it's going to be under Bill O'Brien. So he's got his head spinning. He's got everyone blowing up his phone, other recruits texting back and forth, other guys who were committed, Mike Gesicki, Mark Allen, who else in that mix? Jason Kabinda. All these players who were on board with the O'Brien regime are now trying to react and respond to this major, massive coaching shift. About 20 minutes later, Marcus Allen picks up his phone. It's Bill O'Brien. Hey, man, think you're going to be a great player. Keep it going, but I'm off to the NFL. Good luck. Goodbye. That's where things were, and Marcus Allen's left there thinking, okay, New Year's Eve 2013, here I am. I think I'm going to Penn State. Now they don't have the coaching staff. This program was already kind of a little bit uneasy because of where things were. What's next? So I said, okay, so how do you handle the rest? Got all these different teams coming at him trying to say, hey, are you ready to join our class? Are you ready to leave Penn State behind? And Marcus Allen says, I don't really remember who else was in the running for coach, but I remember thinking they should hire that Franklin guy. He seems exciting. And lo and behold, first week of January, James Franklin is the guy. There were rumors of other coaches. If you recall, Al Golden, formerly the Miami Hurricanes coach, there was a lot of his name was swirling around a lot. But James Franklin's the guy. Vanderbilt, people clearly at the time were like, called him a complete outsider, didn't realize the fact that he had major connections to Pennsylvania and considers it home. But James Franklin comes here and he goes to work on the recruiting trail. He keeps guys on board. I mean, Mike Gesicki, I can't tell you. I was covering Mike Gesicki, and you probably heard the story before, a few years in southern New Jersey where I was working as a prep beat reporter down there for ESPN Radio. And I remember Mike Gesicki talking about how much Urban Meyer was after him, all the way down the stretch. I'm talking about, post-college commitment, before his commitment. It was Ohio State versus Penn State. Urban Meyer was pretty relentless in the recruitment. So James Franklin had to convince somebody like Mike Gesicki to stay on board, keep the faith, trust in the process. And again, I got a different perspective today from Deshaun Hamilton. Now, Hamilton's a senior, but he had a redshirt year his freshman year. Came in, he suffered an injury in his final high school game. So he was recovering, he was watching, he was learning under Bill O'Brien his freshman year, 2013. So he talks about the locker room. When I said, what was it like when this class of 2014 rolled in? James Franklin's in his first year. These are the guys that he brought in. Some of them committed to Bill O'Brien. Some of these players committed to Joe Paterno. What was the locker room dynamic like then? And Deshaun Hamilton kind of shook his head for a moment. He just said, it was very disconnected, essentially. He said there was leaders, the leaders who were there, the older guys, they didn't necessarily know how to lead because they were brought in by one coaching staff. And then the bottom fell out for Penn State. And then another coaching staff came in and was gone within 2 years. And now everyone has their own leadership style. Everyone has the culture they want to create. And it clearly seemed Deshaun Hamilton almost describing it as kind of a meandering group. Everyone's, I don't want to say cliquey, but everyone is kind of within their own structure. They were brought in by different coaching regimes. And so Hamilton said where we are now in our locker room culture is the leaders were brought in by Franklin, or they have grown up with Franklin. They've been with the program. They've seen the highs. They've seen the lows. They've seen Coach Franklin and the coaches be mad. They've seen Coach Franklin and the coaches be thrilled. They've all been painful losses, and they've all been through the wins that they'll never forget. And to this point, he says, now when the next recruiting class comes in, they're going to encounter a locker room culture that is completely, laid out, completely structured, and is very accommodating to young players as far as incubating them with the right knowledge and with the right, approach to becoming a professional mindset in college football. And that's what you really have to do. You have to approach it as a pro. if you want to succeed at this level of college football, because there's no wasted time here day after day. So I just want to say things were in 2014 to where they are now, major leap, not just what you see on the field, but also what you don't see and what we don't see in the media, everything that goes on behind closed doors, in the dorm rooms, in the locker room, in the weight room, in the film room. Accountability is at an all-time high under James Franklin right now. And I would guess that it was probably the highest it's been in this locker room since later in Joe Paterno's career, because I don't think Bill O'Brien had enough time to establish a concrete culture of his own. So we're talking about what I would imagine would be the most close-knit locker room that Penn State has featured in at least a decade, and they're bringing in the best recruiting class that they've signed in the modern recruiting era when you look at rankings and ratings among recruits. So that dates back to the start of this century. So again, 10-2, second straight double-digit victory, and the future looks pretty good. So for those who are out there saying, why are we wasting our time talking about Penn State football? This team let us all down. Again, you may have entered this thinking playoffs are bust, and I know a lot of people got excited with the 7-0 start, Michigan win, and it's a bummer not to see this team. I'd love to go cover some playoff games. Trust me. But I think it's very nearsighted, and I think it's very a lack of perspective to say if this Penn State team right now where they are in their progression and in their strides and in their development under this coaching staff needs to get to a playoff or the season's a failure, I think we're shortchanging where this thing is at. That's my piece. Those are my 2 cents. Take them for what they're worth. Throw them back at me. Do what you'd like. So those are my thoughts on where this Penn State team is. I want to take a moment to check out some of your comments because I've seen a few. Okay, Kevin Fogarty, you mentioned an interesting topic that came up this week, really came up last weekend, and now it's continuing into this Nebraska week. Kevin says, speak about Manny Bowen, please. Is it time to move on? Second part, I can't possibly say. I don't want to speculate. This is a young man. This is a college student trying to live out his dream. No idea what the details are. Typically, we don't. With college football, there's usually a pretty big iron curtain between what the media knows and has access to, and what the coaching staff knows and what the support staff knows. It's not like the NFL where there's usually a reason for the suspension and you got everybody on Twitter talking about it. That's not the case in college football. Could be a variety of things. Not appropriate to speculate. I won't start there. But I will say it's not good to be suspended twice within a year if you're Manny Bowen. That's not a good indicator of his progression within this program because this is a guy who came on strong last year. This year started the first 9 games of the season. And now suspended for the Rutgers game. We find out Saturday after the game. One of the first questions Coach Franklin gets is, what's the deal with Manny Bowen? Is he hurt? And Franklin very clearly says, violation of team rules. So Tuesday's press conference comes around. One of the first questions he gets, what's the status on Manny Bowen? Or is Manny Bowen going to be playing this week against Nebraska? Short to the point, James Franklin says it's a no on Manny Bowen. So, again, we're getting zero detail here, and I refuse to speculate on something that, like this, especially when it's student athletes who are 21 years old, 20 years old. But under this current situation, you view this as now a bit of a trend, a bit of a this is kind of an habitual thing a little bit now because last year in the Rose Bowl he was suspended. No player ever wants to be suspended from a game like the Rose Bowl. And now here in the crux of the season where this team's trying to right the ship, after 2 losses, Manny Bowen now not a part of the process here, these 2 games. And then when we look towards the end, what's the status on his return? Franklin didn't really shed light on that. He certainly didn't give us a timetable. The only thing that he said when asked, will Manny Bowen return this year? Are we going to see him next week, bowl game, what have you? The response from James Franklin was, Manny Bowen's a no right now. Manny Bowen's suspended right now. So, that's what you would expect. And it could be a situation where Manny Bowen maybe needs to prove himself on a weekly basis. Maybe he's on a probation and Franklin really doesn't know if he's going to be available for the Maryland game because they'll assess it, next Sunday or something like that and see where he's at and see if he's met his obligations. Again, I have zero clue. Or it could be a situation where we're left wondering and we don't see Manny Bowen the rest of this year. And that would obviously cause a lot of concern, raise a major flag. But at the very least, I think it's a problem for Manny Bowen because, this is letting down teammates. This is letting down himself. I'm sure it's letting down family. And, I would, regardless of what it is, if James Franklin and the staff feel that they're going to bench a guy who has started every single game and sideline him because of something that happened at some point, doing something, we, again, don't know the deal, but that means it was justified. I mean, that means that if coaches don't want to lose long-term starters, coaches don't want to lose guys that they trust on the field, and they do that by taking off a guy like Manny Bowen. Fortunately for them, they've got a player that they can't say enough great things about with Brandon Smith. Goes out there, has a nice game, 10 tackles last week. Now Brandon Smith, a former walk-on, a guy that everyone loves. He's going for a medical degree, but he is somebody that doesn't have that physical, athletic pedigree like a Manny Bowen, who is a physical freak on his own right. So this team gets a little bit less athletic in the linebacker core. Brandon Smith, again, stepped up big last week against Rutgers. He'll be counted on again against Nebraska. But as far as it comes to Manny Bowen, not a great look for him. Not a great look for him. And trust me when I tell you, NFL scouting departments will be digging into both of these suspensions when the time comes for him to try to go pro. Put together a nice body of work, but these NFL scouts, they'll call your third-grade teacher to get the dirt on you. So, this is going to be something that's going to be, again, a flag raised in his draft process when he gets there. It's just something to be aware of. But again, zero idea where we go with Manny Bowen here, and not sure how Penn State will be handling, and not sure exactly why or what they're handling. But you have to trust in the coaching staff in a decision like this, and we see it take place in college football. Let's just hope for Manny Bowen's sake, it's something that he can bounce back from, learn from, and move forward and progress, and regain the trust of the coaching staff. Someone also mentions thoughts of Tommy Stevens transferring. Y'all are, peppering me with the tough ones. Tommy Stevens, Coach Franklin at every turn, he was asked this week about, what does Tommy Stevens bring to the team? How has he handled this situation? And Coach Franklin, I love when he brings up his playing days. I love when coaches do that because it gives you really good perspective. Franklin said the life of a backup quarterback can be frustrating. That's just the way it is. And he lived that quarterback, but he had to bide his time. And he said, after talking about Tommy Stevens and calling him a pro and for his preparation and the way he challenges Trace McSorley and the way he supports Trace McSorley, he finished all that comment off with when Tommy Stevens' chance comes, he'll be ready. So there is obviously a ton of confidence in Tommy Stevens within this locker room, within this coaching staff. And Tommy Stevens' question for himself is going to be, is it worth the wait? Am I willing to wait if Trace is coming back in 2018? Am I going to be the number 2 guy? Am I going to be, catching the occasional pass and having the occasional packages here and little wrinkles in the offense? Am I okay with waiting until 2019 for my time to shine? And because then it's an off season for Tommy Stevens if he has NFL aspirations, right? Tommy Stevens is either going to go out there and show what he's got in 1 year, and NFL scouts are going to be wowed. We all know Tommy Stevens has the physical, athletic attributes to be a very special player. There's no denying that. But if he goes out there and things don't go well, that's his one shot. There's no next year for Tommy Stevens to prove himself all over again. So, that's obviously for any quarterback in the country, any college football program, when you're number 2 guy, that clock ticks a little bit louder. I can guarantee you that. I've seen it play out in situations where I've been a part of the recruiting department where the number 2 quarterback, you can tell he knows the eligibility is moving while his reps aren't coming. So Tommy Stevens would be something for him to think about. And obviously now he'll be through 4 years in the program. That means he will have an opportunity to graduate, and these graduate transfers have become huge across college football. But at this point, I would say Tommy Stevens seems very happy with Penn State. He seems very happy with the offensive system, and he certainly supports McSorley and, again, challenges and competes with McSorley. But I would be surprised if Tommy Stevens transfers. I would not be surprised if a guy like Jake Zembeck transfers, though, who was brought in last year by Penn State. He's somebody who was beaten out by Sean Clifford for the number 3 job. So I think if there's a quarterback that's on the move, that would probably be the guy I would be least surprised if he looks for another opportunity, would be Jake Zembak, because Penn State bringing in Will Levis next year as a freshman. They've already got a 2019 guy committed. They're high on Sean Clifford. I am high on Sean Clifford as well. So I think there may be a subtraction from the quarterback room heading into next year. I would be very surprised if it was Tommy Stevens. And, I think we're all looking forward to seeing him play in 2019. But it's also pretty enjoyable to watch Trace McSorley do his thing. He is a really fun player to watch. I believe Chris Ash, the Rutgers head coach, said if you're in a pick'em game on a football field in your hometown and you gather everybody from around the community on the field, Trace McSorley is the guy that you are picking first for that game. So that's pretty high praise, and that's what makes him so fun to watch, his ability to go out there, move around. I know some call him a wizard, so I'm going to go with that one for today. So Nebraska, quick overview of where they are right now leading into this game. And by the way, of course, I'll join you live from Beaver Stadium leading up to that 4 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. I'll give you the latest. I'll give you the rundown. I'll give you my score for the prediction. And, we'll chat and we'll talk about what you want to talk about on Saturday as well, the final game at Beaver Stadium. But with this Nebraska team, this is a team that's coming in, just tripping over their own feet. This is a team that is coming in limping. They have lost now, 3 out of the past 4 games. Some of these games have been pretty embarrassing. They're now 4-6 on the season. That's never going to cut it for the football culture they have established. For the Nebraska Cornhuskers there in Lincoln, 4-6 might as well be rock bottom. 4-6 is disastrous, and I would say there's a very strong chance of them heading home at 4-7. To add injury to insult, or insult to injury, you've got a team maybe without a starting quarterback. Tanner Lee is in concussion protocol right now. Now he hasn't been, a transcendent player. He hasn't been a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate, but he's been through the fire and he's come up with some big games in his career. And Tanner Lee, if he is out for this game, and again going through concussion protocol, then they're going to have to turn to redshirt freshman Patrick O'Brien. He's a guy I really liked when he was a high school senior out in California. He is somebody, though, with very limited experience. It will be a first start. We're talking about the first start on senior day in Beaver Stadium against one of the Big Ten's top defenses. That is not an easy task for a first-time starter. And to make matters worse, people talking about Penn State's offensive line issues and why isn't that more solidified? Nebraska has real problems. Patrick O'Brien played 2 quarters and a few minutes, so he played a little more than 1 half in replacing Tanner Lee last week against Minnesota. In that game, he was sacked 6 times, and that's in 2 quarters plus. Not even 3 full quarters. He was sacked 6 times by the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So something to keep in mind there, that this team appears ripe for the picking with Nebraska. Christoph, great to see you, and we'll catch you next week, hopefully. If you want to catch the end of the show, this will always be recorded on Facebook immediately after we're done, so feel free to check in on anything you missed or what you may miss. Goodbye to you, and enjoy your evening. For the rest of you still here, Nebraska's other elephant in the room with them is Mike Riley. Doesn't seem like he's going to survive this season. Their head coach has been obviously under a lot of turmoil. The athletic director who hired him was fired this season. They brought in another athletic director. Typically when that's the case, those athletic directors come in with their own agenda, and they have their own list of guys they want to coach the football team for a program like that. There's already been a ton of rumors that Scott Frost, currently the head coach at Central Florida, former star Cornhuskers quarterback, he is maybe an object of obsession for them. He could be the guy to replace. So you've got a team, 1, without a starting quarterback, it appears will be the case. 2, their coach, is he just running out the string here? Is he a lame duck coach right at this point? How much are the players buying in what he's selling? There's a lot to worry about if you're a Nebraska fan right now, and they may have a rebuild situation coming their way. They've recruited okay, but things are just not well in their football culture right now, and it's showing on the football field. One guy to watch out for who's been very dangerous is J.D. Spielman, freshman wide receiver. Had a really nice season so far. He's broken a few freshman records for the Cornhuskers. But outside of that, I like Penn State's chances to – and I think they're going to be emotional. Penn State's going to come out probably as fired up as we've seen them since the Ohio State game, because I don't think we saw that at Michigan State. I don't think we saw that against Rutgers. I think they're going to, from they come out of the tunnel, they're going to be fired up. They're going to want to make a major point. They're back in the top 10. They're going to want to punish this opponent and send their seniors out of Beaver Stadium in style. So, I'll put it this way. I'm picking a big Rutgers win. I'll give you that score on Saturday, but I do think this is going to be a really a fun day to be a Nittany Lions fan in Beaver Stadium watching this game or watching TV with your family and friends. So there will also be a couple notable recruits in the house on Saturday. 2 2018 targets will be at Beaver Stadium for official visits. So that means they won't just be at the game. They'll be around all weekend. They will be getting a major look at the program, at the potential players they will be with. They're going to be hosted by players. They're going to be meeting with the academic support staff and the athletic support staff, and their parents will be doing the same. It's basically running inventory on the program, on these universities. And those 2 official visits this weekend will be taken by defensive end Jason Oway of Blair Academy in Blairstown, New Jersey, and Solomon Enos, wide receiver from North Canyon High School in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, I think we all probably who follow recruiting, follow our coverage, are pretty familiar with these 2 names. Put out a list today for the need-to-know targets. 6 guys that you absolutely have to know about who are being targeted by Penn State in the 2018 recruiting cycle, which is now 2 months. We are now 5 weeks from today. It is the start of the first early signing period, December 20th. It's also when we find out where Micah Parsons is committing. Many think coming back to Penn State. That's the way I'm leaning right now. So, we're 5 weeks away from this recruiting class really taking shape. Guys signing national letters of intent. And then a few weeks after that, we're going to learn where Jason Oway is going. Rasheed Walker, a 4-star offensive lineman out of Maryland. We're going to find out where Tyreek Smith is heading, defensive end from Cleveland who's on the target list. And then, we're a month away at that point from February 7th, National Signing Day. But with these 2 official visits, there's not a lot of intrigue left with the 2018 class outside of a few players, and these are 2 of them. Solomon Enos is the son of Curtis Enos, former star Penn State running back. He was on campus with his father April 22nd for the spring game. This is his first trip back to Happy Valley since then. A big-time senior season for him. I think he had 1,200 offensive yards, 15 touchdowns on his season. Really a dynamic player, 6'4", 190 pounds, considered a 4-star prospect. And you pair him with Justin Shorter, another 6'4" receiver. It's a lot of height coming into your wide receiver group next year. And the question is there room for everybody? Because you got 3 wide receivers on board. So we'll find out. We'll find out as things progress. Enos coming back to town for his official, and then Jason Oway, guy that I have been speaking highly of really since I got on this beat. Out of New Jersey, 6'5", 235. It's only his second year of high school football. He's got about 30 offers, and he just had 13 sacks in less than 5 full games. Absolutely love this prospect. He loves the craft. He wants to prove that he is the best defensive end in the country during his college football career. I can't say enough about Jason Oway. And any team that lands him is getting a player that has just about the highest ceiling you can imagine. It's like, when you can go into Madden and create a player. He's like that. He is raw, but he has so much potential, and he really seems like someone who's willing to dig in and work for to reach that potential. So Jason Oway will be on campus this weekend. It will be his 5th overall visit to Happy Valley. He attended a camp in July, a couple visits in the spring. He went to the Georgia State game back in September. And this one is starting to become a very competitive recruitment. I mean, it's always been, but Ohio State and Penn State have long been considered the top 2 teams for him. Talked to Jason Oway last week, and he said, yeah, those are still the top 2 teams, but the offer from Michigan, that's a game changer. And he will be at Michigan the following week, November 25th, when Michigan hosts Ohio State. Big matchup there. Jason Oway will be there, and he will also be going to Notre Dame the second weekend of December. So, 4 great options academically and athletically for just about any football player when you look at Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Notre Dame. Jason Oway going to enjoy this process a little bit longer, and he will be announcing his commitment January 4th during the Under Armour All-America game. So keep your eyes on those commitments or on those targets coming to campus. Obviously, we'll have stuff early next week and during the weekend on what it means for their overall recruitments. Hope to talk to Jason Oway, Sunday or Monday and get some feedback there. And when it comes to these late visits, these can really make the difference. So it's something to keep your eye on. And again, in today's recruiting notebook, our recruiting notebooks run daily, 7:20 they post. Today's recruiting notebook focuses on the 6 recruits you need to know about moving ahead during this final stretch of the 2018 recruiting cycle. So it's that time as we finish with our 3 top performers from the Penn State Nittany Lions recruiting class. While I'm reading this, feel free to write a comment or do it after the show. Questions about the recruiting efforts in 2018, 2019, 2020. Would love to chat about that in our recruiting notebook tomorrow. Always like to put the focus on recruiting with those any of these classes. There's no rules, regulations. Just don't be rude to the recruits. That's the only thing I ask of you. But here are our 3 top performers from the 2018 Penn State class. As we prepare to say goodbye at Beaver Stadium to the Penn State seniors, I want to let you in on a little bit of intel from these top 3 guys who will be coming to campus next year. We start by looking toward the Sunshine State. Wiregrass Ranch High School in the Tampa, Florida area is where you will find Jordan Minor, 4-star cornerback who committed to Penn State back in July. He's somebody who's been doing a little bit of everything for his team, now in the playoffs, and he's continuing to do the same. He ended up with 91 offensive yards, receiving, rushing. He does a little of this, a little of that. Jordan Minor with 91 yards of offensive yards. He had a 75-yard touchdown catch in this game. He also had 2 interceptions, showing his ability as a ball hawk in the defensive secondary, and he needed to do all these things. Touchdown, 2 interceptions. His team won by 7 points, so came up big in a 17-10 victory over Lake Nona. Number 2 on our list, he has been a common name on our list when we look at these top performers. Penn State running back commit Ricky Slade out of C.D. Hilton High School in Woodbridge. Another phenomenal effort for him. 124 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns rushing as well. He now has 36 touchdowns this season. In 11 games, he now has more than 2,200 all-purpose yards. He has accounted for touchdowns as a passer, as a receiver, as a rusher, as a kick returner. We're gonna all miss watching Saquon Barkley do his thing as an all-purpose weapon if he does leave after this year. But don't be surprised if Ricky Slade makes a case to get in that conversation next year as a freshman, because he is Mr. All-Purpose as well. And number 1 on our list, a name that we haven't focused on too much when we get to these top 3s, kid that really interesting prospect. He currently plays safety predominantly for Cumberland Valley in Pennsylvania. Expected to shift towards outside linebacker at Penn State. That's Charlie Catchier. Listen to this game he posted in a playoff performance. 5 catches, 119 yards, 2 touchdown receptions, 3 interceptions, and a 62-9 win over Central Dauphine East. 3 interceptions, you had me right there. I mean, the trifecta, you're on the list. And then he throws in 119 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Forget about it. He's number 1, Charlie Catchier out of Cumberland Valley, one of 3 linebackers committed to this Penn State class. So congrats to Charlie Catchier, Ricky Slade, Jordan Minor, not just for making this list, but for extending your senior seasons with playoff victories. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Really enjoyed the conversation as usual. If you missed any of this show, you can always go back. This will be posted on Facebook immediately after we conclude. You can watch it in its entirety. Looked like we went about 45 minutes or so. So had fun talking about these seniors and some of their thoughts, and really had fun. I hope just putting things in perspective about Penn State, where the program is now, where it may be headed, and where it was just a few years ago. And, of course, as always, focusing on recruiting. Thank you to everyone for joining. Enjoy your Thursday nights with those you love, or Wednesday night, I should say. And I'll catch you live from Beaver Stadium on Saturday, 4 p.m. kickoff against Nebraska. We'll talk pregame. We'll have live video of the team arriving at the stadium, and we'll do our best to salute the seniors as they play their final game in Happy Valley. Thanks again. Representing landof10.com, I am Tyler Donohue. Take care.